Hello everyone, I'm Xiao Gang. Next, we will officially begin learning C++ in UE5. We have already reviewed the concepts of C++ above, and now we will discuss the concepts of UE5 C++. Actually, in UE5 C++, we don't really use C++ concepts that much. In fact, the differences are quite significant. Yes, so everyone needs to make a mental shift. I would prefer you to use blueprint thinking and mindset to understand our UE5 C++. First of all, let me emphasize the concept of class, which is essentially an object. Actually, an object is also a class. Why am I emphasizing this again? Because later I will encounter the concept of class default object. This is a bit confusing. Actually, let me open a blueprint project here. Open a project. This way, I can explain it better. Because we will compare it with blueprints, it might be a bit better. In our blueprint, what is a class? Actually, we are talking about this. When we spawn an actor from class, this is called a class. And the thing that is spawned from it is called an instance, called an object. Yeah, this is the class. This is the instance object we spawned. And actually, in our class, this information, it also contains a default object. That is all of your objects. It is based on when they were first created. They all start as this default object. Then, after you set its properties here and change it, it is equivalent to having a template. So everyone needs to understand that this is called the class default object. Okay, now you know what a class is and what an object is. This part is a bit confusing. At that point, we emphasize how a blueprint project can be converted into a C++ project. In fact, you only need to create a C++ class here. Then you should be able to develop using blueprints without involving C++ code development. So why emphasize this point? Because many plugins, when they are written, have some that you must have a C++ Protect to package, right? Many plugins, the ones I've used, or even some I've never heard of, are all like this. Because some of their modules, so let me show you how to convert this, right? It's actually quite clear. Here we create a blueprint project. I just created one randomly. Okay, then here we create a blueprint project. Let's just name it my project Bibble. Okay, now let's create it. This is a blueprint project, right? Okay, then here we open its project structure. Actually, I'll just create a new class here. Just save it. Let me jump over there. And you can see this project is a blueprint project. Then we first convert it to C++. We can just create a C++ class here. Then we can create any class. We click Next. Then we click here. Okay, so we don't need to worry about this part. Just click low, because live code is not turned off. Okay, then look here. We find the local section. You will see that this project now contains source code, and it provides the structure we talked about earlier. This module and builds, right? And this is the one we just created. You can actually ignore it. You can delete it. It doesn't affect anything either. It's just one. It just compiles like this. Then you start to do this OS. Wait a moment. Right. Actually, then you continue writing your blueprint. This won't affect you at all. But this knowledge is very important. Finally, I demonstrated it to everyone. Okay, there should be no problem starting it here. This might be a bit slower. Let's continue looking at our document, okay? So, first, let's talk about the Unreal Engine. Regarding the definition of the reflection system, actually, let's first understand it simply. Let's put it in plain language. That is, our UEC++ reflection system, the entire framework of this engine. This reflection system allows us to write a large amount of code or just use blueprints to help us record information, generate data, and call tools to achieve these cool rendering effects, including damage calculation, including some game logic, and some tools. So this whole thing is, it is actually the reflection system of our engine. Yes, its underlying code is all our C++ code. No problem at all. Here, I'll just close it. Okay, let's close it. Just erase it directly here. This kind of operation can actually be quite dangerous sometimes, because if you haven't saved it, it might be lost. This is startup. It's normal for it to be a bit laggy. Close it. Okay, now let's take another look at this official paragraph. Actually, I need to emphasize something here. This chapter we are on. What is this chapter called? It's called Basic Concepts. We will cover a lot in this chapter, but you only need to understand the most basic concepts. What are the most basic concepts? It means we will guide you to create some things later. That is, we will guide you to create several classes. Then you'll use these classes, then you will have mastered these things. Make sure that the code you write for creating these classes might without issues, and it can achieve the same functionality as blueprints. That's all you need. So this is our basic concept. We mainly refer to this official documentation and then explain the examples to you. Yes, that is, you need to know the actor in blueprints, object, pawn, these things correspond to what in C++. How do I control the camera? In blueprint, in C++, how to control the camera. These are the basic concepts. Then there are also some not so basic concepts like these UCLASS, these UPROPERTY macros, these smart pointers, and various metadata specifiers. These things, these are not things you need to master right now. They are things you will need to master in chapters 5 and 6. So this chapter is about basic concepts. It's normal to feel a bit confused while listening. Don't just listen to what I say. Don't look at what the documentation says. Just look at what our code has written. Implement it. Then come back in 2 chapters, and it will be very easy. And it's not difficult for us. Actually, it's just these few files. Okay, so we'll stop here for you. Now let's expand on this topic. Actually, in Unreal Engine, the base class for objects is UPROPERTY. Then each class is essentially a subclass of this UPI, or a class derived from a och, nai, chi, mai, di, chi, pi. And then it continues to extend further. So we can, let's open a blueprint here. Open a blueprint. First, this is a general concept explanation. When we create a new one here, there is an all class option here. You will see that each level is derived from UBIS, and this is equivalent to a G class. These are all classes. Then after actor, it goes layer by layer to pawn and character, right? After pawn comes character, right? This is the concept of such classes. Then, how do we do it in C++? Let this class tell the engine that we have a class here that you need to add to your management. We use this UCLASS macro to perform this management. So in C++, how do we define a class? Actually, it's very clear like this. Let's first take a look. Let's look at base object. This part is your class name. Note that when you name it, remove the U. It's called Xiao Gang base object. It inherits from a break. And this is a standard Unreal Engine C++ class. Then we use the UCLASS macro to tell the engine that there is a UObject view and you should manage it quickly. This is an export macro, meaning it allows others to use it. It is equivalent to an export macro. It's a marker indicating it can be used. This is the class specifier. If it is a class, mark it with class like this. This is the access specifier, meaning we want public inheritance. This line is usually written like this by default. That's it, okay? Then this Gilardi's body and new class are used together with the high-speed engine. There is a UObject here, and it is combined with our UCLASS and Gilardi's body. Together, you handle it. So this is defining one of the most common Unreal C++ classes. Then you can see it actually does a lot of work inside. We will expand on that later. Okay, so such a class is defined with our UObject processing system. A class is managed. So what is T subclass of? It is essentially exposing a class's variable to Blueprint, allowing you to specify and set it. So let's understand it from the Blueprint perspective. That is, we created a variable here, and then this variable, we just set it as UActor, for example, and its type. Its type is your Blueprint class is this class reference. So what is this kind of variable in Unreal? It is essentially UObject new. Isn't it UClass new or T subclass if that's what it means? Okay. Then we will demonstrate it again later, the subclasses, and after finishing this class, what is a struct? A struct is essentially data. You haven't used structs in Blueprint. Here we have already encountered it. Struct. Here, this is a struct. It just contains some data. Right. So in UE5, we use this UE5C++. How is it written? Actually, it is written like this. It's the same. It's just that it doesn't have inheritance. But you can inherit. That is, you have some overlapping structs. You can inherit, but we don't need that here. We'll just demonstrate one. Without inheritance. What structure is fine, and it starts with F. It is xg by strict, and it is wrapped with ustruct macro. And this JRT's ustruct body, wrapper. These two tell the Unreal Engine. This place, I have a struct here. You need to handle it for me. Then we can write variables here. For example, if you want to define a string, then in C++ it's called fstring. Lamb. Hey, this is a contentment. Not bad at all. If you need to expose it to Blueprint, you can usually add a UPROPERTY. This way Blueprint. It can be reflected to Blueprint, but you also need to add some data. I made a typo here. Okay, good. We will expand on these later. First, let's cover the basic concept. This is a struct corresponding to this. In this blueprint, it is this. Actually, it is. Good. We haven't written any additional data here. Okay, then let's continue. Let's continue looking further. This smart pointer is quite complex. Currently, in this chapter, or before working on our game case study, none of us will use this smart pointer because it is quite complex. So I can skip it like this. It is actually for convenience to manage some objects that are not Unreal Engine, non-new objects, behavior, and data, because our Obro has the engine, helping us manage its lifecycle, and for some non-UCLASS data, or F-class structs, we need to manage them ourselves. So the Unreal Smart Pointer library provides another set of lifecycle management systems. The interface is actually very clear. What is the interface? You should have written interfaces in Blueprint as well, right? Take a look. Let me find the blueprint. Take a look at the blueprint. Okay, I remember there is an interface in the animation blueprint. Animation layer interface. This blueprint interface, it is the interface within the blueprint. So, in Unreal Engine, we need to write an interface. How do we write it? Actually, it's very simple. You just write an interface like this. Okay, we'll expand on the camera later. Its corresponding format as that of the blueprint. It's just a bit special. It's written as a U class, wrote an I class, because it's an interface. So it's designed like this. The U class handles reflection for you. The I class defines what actually needs to be inherited. Some methods to implement. Okay. Then similarly, use the interface macro and Genuity's body. We put them together. This part is an export macro. This is a standard way of writing it. No problem. Let's take a look first. Okay. So finally, this metadata, we collectively call it the specifier of the metadata for the classes we just mentioned. Identifies structure, enums, functions, properties, interactions in all aspects. That is to say, this data during my development, how it should be used, who can use it, what level it is defined at, and what things it requires. So we control it through the metadata specifier. So this metadata specifier is, there might be fewer here. We can take a look here. Since we are still using native ones, if there isn't any, we can just open any project. Let's use this one. Let's see if there is any here. This is a metadata specifier. You will find that in this is an enum, right? And this UMeta is also a metadata satisfier. Right after this red, it passes some strings in the parentheses here, strings. Then these strings, they will be recognized by our UHT. And then execute the object's functions respectively. It's like we make a marker. Mark it as a blueprint. Point type, that is blueprint accesses this thing. This is a metadata marker. Okay, here we may not have much. There is also here, look, this is a modifier for a function. That is, it can be called by Blueprint. And this metadata, then it is for internal use. And at the same time, it has a world context object to handle. This place has a default value assigned. That should be what it means. Okay, then let's continue looking below. In summary, this reflection system of ours, its entire framework is like this. So the content to master in this chapter is that you need to take our class struct and then this interface, create it in C++, and use it in Blueprint. So that is the core concept of this chapter. All right. Then we'll explain to him later how to create these classes